Welcome to the For Love and Money podcast, the show where business and social purpose meet to inspire a movement for positive change. Here's your host, Carolyn Butler-Madden.
For today's episode on the For Love and Money podcast, I'm delighted to welcome two guests, Jade Collins and Alanna Bastin-Byrne from Femeconomy. Femeconomy educates consumers, budget owners and business owners on how purchasing decisions can create gender equality. Femeconomy certified businesses have at least 30% of women on the board of directors or are 50% female owned. And so far, over 850 brands have met Femeconomy's criteria. So more on that soon. For now, let me introduce my guests. Jade Collins has 20 years global experience in corporate executive human resources and management consulting roles in the mining, energy and aerospace industries, leading large-scale complex multi-million-dollar change management programs. Jade finds the combination of her HR, psychology and MBA qualifications and her leadership experience is invaluable for creating networks and engaging others to increase gender equality in leadership across industries. She was also a member of the Queensland Government Strategic Advisory Group for the Toward Gender Parity Women on Boards initiative and the 2019 CQU Alumni of the Year for Social Impact for her work with Femeconomy. Alanna Bastin-Byrne has over 20 years experience in marketing, communications and community development leadership, both in the UK and Australia. And the diversity of Alanna's leadership experience has been instrumental in building Femeconomy's engaged community to advance gender equality. In 2018, Alanna was announced as one of 80 women to watch in business disruption in US, Canada, Australia and Europe. And in 2020, last year, she was a Telstra Businesswoman of the Year finalist and Griffith University's Entrepreneur in Residence. Jade, Alanna, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on the For Love and Money podcast.
Thanks, Carolyn.
All right, this is a chat I'm really excited to get into, a subject very close to my heart as well, obviously. But let's kick off with what purpose means to you, and two questions really. What is your perspective? And I'd love to hear from both of you on this particular one. What's your perspective on the role of love in business?
So I might kick off, Carolyn. I think for me, purpose is about understanding your why. You know, why do you get up in the morning to go to work? Why do you spend more time sometimes with your work colleagues than you do with your friends and family and children and other people that love you? So having an organisation that really understands their why and their purpose and the impact you're getting up and making every day by going to your job or being in your career. But I do actually firmly believe that organisations don't love you back. I think you can love the people that you work with. I think you can love your job, but that's why, you know, understanding your impact and your why is really important. And if I think about an example in my own career, I worked for Southbank in Brisbane in Queensland. And that's an amazing community space, arts and culture, major events, restaurants, precinct. And it's right across from the city. And it's a beautiful part of Brisbane. And, you know, everyone that worked there, we understood the 20-year vision for what that place was going to look like. And what that meant was that everyone in that organisation knew what they were contributing, from, you know, me in marketing to the cleaners, to the board, to people in events, to asset management. And everyone also had respect for everyone's role in that vision. That also meant that any issues that we had within the organisation, it was okay, we could overcome them as a team because we could see the vision of what they were trying to create. And I think, you know, in that organisation, we all loved that place, and it was very special to all of us, and we wanted the community to love that place because we were building it for them. And it's a place that, you know, you didn't need to have a lot of money to go to. You could spend a lot of money, but you could just go there, you know, for a walk with your family and friends. And I think one of the things that the leadership did in that organisation was really making sure that everyone did feel valued and, I guess, in a way loved. So one of the things they used to do was once a month, we used to have a morning tea, and all the cleaners would get up on stage and they'd tell us, how many toilet rolls they'd, and how much tons of rubbish they'd picked up. And the CEO would get up and say, this is why people love this place, because they take good care of it. And, we'll have 100,000 people here for New Year's Eve, and this will look spit spot the next day. So, absolutely everyone felt valued and loved in that organisation. And it was an amazing place to work. But I think now it's slightly different because, Jade is my sister-in-law and I do love her.
Oh, right. I didn't realise that.
In our business. So I guess as a family business, that's a whole different, angle when you talk about love in business.
Oh, fantastic. That brings a whole new perspective to this as well, like joining forces for the sisters, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, that's great, Alanna. Thanks for sharing that. And I think that clarity of vision, knowing what you're there to achieve together and having respect for everyone's role makes space for respect and people to start loving what they're trying to achieve and building those relationships together. So I think, Jade, I'd love to hear from you on this.
Oh, I think if a business doesn't have purpose, it's really difficult to sustain momentum, and it is very hard to get people to engage around a vision that is purely commercially driven. I think that has a finite lifespan. And it also, having purpose, really crystallizes meaning for people. It crystallizes belonging and why people are coming together around that purpose, which is a core human need. And what it does is create a sense of shared vision and community. And just drawing on what Alanna said around us, being sisters-in-law and working together, we do have core purpose in our business, but beyond that and beyond loving what we do from a work perspective, we have such a deep respect and love for each other that also really is a foundation and a bedrock of our business that, propels us through challenges and helps us to overcome obstacles in our path. And it's a really important and, I think, driving force of our business.
Yeah, and so you've touched on that clarity of vision and how that allows you to feel like you belong. I think belonging is such a huge part of it, and it links to identity, doesn't it? That sense of, this is who I am, this is what I care about, this is what I show up every day for. And respect is absolutely a critical part of that. But without that clarity of vision, and you've both talked about that, and I think that is, one of the consistent things about purposeful organisations is they have that vision, not of where they want to be in X years' time, but the future that they're trying to break through and create and contribute to. And that's what I love about what you both are doing with Femeconomy. So what I'd like to ask you is, what inspired you to start Femeconomy? Like, when did this happen? I'd love to hear the story. Sisters-in-law coming together. What was it, a conversation? How did it all start?
It started in a Melbourne taxi. I was there on a work trip and I had worked in HR for a long time. I'd always been interested in diversity and inclusion and trying to get more women in leadership into the very male-dominated industries in which I worked. But I read this statistic that women made over 80% of purchase decisions, and that just struck me as an incredibly powerful lever that I had never come across before. I hadn't seen that information anywhere. And I thought, well, what if women knew this and they could use their purchasing power to support companies that had women in leadership? And then that would encourage more companies to have more women in leadership. And by having more women in leadership, you then change the culture of organisations and make them more inclusive and make them more diverse and, and generate better outcomes. And so I just became completely obsessed with this idea. And I thought, no, I really do need to do something with this. I think I want to create a business. Who can I work with? Who do I want to work with? And really the only person that I thought of was Alanna, because, you know, we share the same values, I guess, at the end of the day. And it was probably a really terrible and horrendously busy time of her life. She had 2 tiny children. My brother was in the throes of changing careers and studying medicine. So they were moving a lot, and it was just sort of a bad idea and a bad time. But I kind of berated her over a period of time into joining me and thinking that, you know, yeah, we can do something with this. We had no idea what we were going to make of it at that stage, but probably the best recruitment decision ever, I think.
Oh, brilliant. And Alanna, what did you think when Jade started coming at you with this?
Well, originally she called me. I can still see where I was in the place that we were living in at that time, and she was just wanted to bounce the idea off me. And so I had lots of different ideas for her. And I think because one of the things that she could see that I was excited by it was purpose driven. You know, for me, working in marketing communications my whole career, I've always had to work for purpose-driven organisations. So social housing, health, the arts, education. You know, I wasn't someone that could, you know, I wouldn't be great at selling tyres, I don't think. But yeah, so I love this idea that, you know, you could try and create change. And because I've also got a community development background with the work that I did in social housing in the UK, I could really see, you know, how we could, you know, bring people together and bring them on that journey. Because, you know, if gender equality is not going to happen for over another 100 years, you know, what's the legacy? How do you create that? How's it an idea that you can keep going beyond, you know, whatever Jade and I create? So yeah, I was really excited, and I was looking for something else at the time. I'd been doing some consultancy work. So we just started working on it, but it was quite funny. I was only telling my husband, Jade's brother, when we were on holidays a few weeks ago, about how I used to go to play groups and I'd book a babysitter for my son, and I would sit in a dollhouse room and I would be working to get some hours there to work. And he couldn't believe it because he was studying medicine at the time. He had sort of no idea what I was really up to. So some quite funny things, I think, that we've looked back on now and go, gosh, I can't believe, you know, there was the dollhouse moments really in this journey.
Mm.
And tell me, so your backgrounds, your respective backgrounds, had you worked, like Jade, you mentioned 80% of purchase decisions are made by women.
Mm.
But this idea of women-owned businesses, or, you know, 50% or 30%, you know, women having a role in influencing the workplace. Where did you come at it from your background? Had you worked in women-dominated industries or male-dominated industries? I'm just curious to get some context around that.
Yeah, I worked predominantly in male-dominated industries for my entire career, but what I could see was the difference that it made to the culture and the workplace experience of people when you had women present, when there were women at the leadership table having the opportunity to participate in discussion and debate and decision making. So, you know, that to me, I had some very early career lessons around the difference that made to outcomes for people. And I just firmly believe that, you know, the more diversity we have around the table, there's really no substitute for lived experience, right? So we don't know what other people's lived experience is, and the more inclusivity we have around that, around differences in lived experience, the better outcomes that we'll have, because we're actually making decisions and representing our actual community and the diversity of our community. It's not one homogenous group making decisions on behalf of a very diverse community with vastly different lived experience.
And it's balance, isn't it? It's like
Yes.
it's just been weighted. It's been so unbalanced for so long. It's not a case of saying it's all about women. It's just about creating that balance and being open, but also inviting in the qualities, the characteristics that women tend to bring into a place, an environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the different perspectives, you know, the number of conversations that I've had with women working in industry who were, I guess, the trailblazers and, you know, the only woman on site or the first woman on site, about fundamental things like, you know, there's no female toilet. So they used to have to drive off site or, you know, use a portaloo or, you know, just crazy fundamental stuff that people don't see if it doesn't affect them.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the TV series we had on our screens recently with Annabelle Crabb, which talked about women in misrepresented, and exactly that about, you know, female toilets in Parliament and the lack of them, and so many other barriers. Amazing, isn't it?
So I think too, Carolyn, you know, gender equality is not a zero-sum game. So there's lots of examples, you know, Jade shared with me from her career. For example, you know, no toilets in underground mines, none.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. So then by making the organisation more female friendly, like putting toilets in for everybody, you're actually helping everyone, you know, by putting in like heavy equipment to, you know, help with heavy lifting things. You know, blokes get sore knees too, so it helps them as well. And then also, you know, flexibility around rosters. Like everyone wanted that, but it was when they were trying to make the organisation more female friendly that it actually benefited everyone.
Yeah.
And so I think that's always a message that we want to get out there because, you know, again, yeah, gender equality is not a zero-sum game. Everyone benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you pointed out, there are some basic practical things that it creates, but also just attitudes and approaches and what's acceptable in the workplace. I feel like, you know, through my career, we've seen change from women coming in and women having to, in order to succeed, demonstrate very sort of male attributes, and over time starting to get comfortable with, actually, no, you know, we can bring in empathy and concern for people. We can bring in emotion and caring and that sort of thing. And for me, I think that's a big part of one of the questions I'm asking, which is who made the rules that business, in order to be professional, should be aloof, cold, clinical? Who made those rules, right? We accept them as the norm, but somebody decided that it should be that way, and we kind of have gone along with it. But where has it led us?
I think COVID's changing that though as well, because there's less separation between home and work. Again, you know, they talk about the Great Migration, where there's going to be lots of people changing jobs within the next year, and I think they're going to be looking for organizations with purpose, and that, you know, love what they do. So because, you know, they're seeing how these, you know, what they need at home and what they need at work is and the values that they might have as an individual, you know, are not working with the organization that they're working in. So I think, you know, the next year for purpose, it's going to be really interesting in organizational culture, like Jade was saying. Those companies that have got those things right will attract the best talent, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that strongly too. So let's get into more deeply, what is the Femeconomy effect?
So it's actually about the significant purchasing power that women have to drive change using that economic lever of their purse power, or we talk about procurement power as well. So like Jade said before, she read that Harvard Business Review article that women make 85% of purchase decisions. You know, that's a huge economic lever to drive change. So this is a stat from a couple of years ago, but the global consumer economy was valued at $35 trillion women's spending accounts for about $28 trillion. So 2/3 of all the money in the world is spent by women. So actually, if you look at that collective purse power, it's actually bigger than the economies of China and India put together twice over.
That's incredible.
The Femeconomy effect and purse power is a real thing. But that, I think for us, that's why we still have to educate the female economy around why female-led companies are important. Why should they choose a female-led company over another company? And the reason is, what Jade was saying before about her experience about what female leaders bring to the company. But research shows that, one, that company is more profitable. So there's actually more opportunity for everyone in the organisation. But they're more likely to have workplace flexibility. They're less likely to have a gender pay gap, and they're more likely to employ women, which is, again, women's economic security is a big issue in Australia. It's a big issue globally, but also COVID has really impacted that. So, again, companies with female leaders are more likely to create those changes because they're at that leadership table. They're talking about their lived experience and what needs to change.
So in Australia, what is the representation of females in leadership positions? Have you got any stats or sense of where we're at with that at the moment?
So Jade reviews the data each year on Femeconomy. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Jade?
It's probably better to talk about the WGEA data. That's where companies with over 100 employees actually need to report into the Workplace Gender Equality Agency on an annual basis of what their gender diversity is at leadership level, and throughout the organisation. And also what their remuneration is as well. So, currently we're sitting at, I think, an over 14% pay gap between men and women.
Okay,
so,
mind blown.
So I just wanted to pause and let that sink in. So, that tells us, though we are making progress, we absolutely cannot afford to stop measuring this, to stop talking about this, because it is so easy and fragile, this progress, and it can stall quickly if we don't constantly take action. And taking action and making plans to improve is really important. I think we're sitting at around less than 5% female CEOs of ASX 200 organisations. Again, if you have a look at the stats, it gets better probably around middle management, but when you start to get into that C-suite tier is really when things start to become more difficult for women to break into that level of leadership.
And so, we are making progress, aren't we?
We are making progress in some areas. I would say if we have a look at the World Economic Forum's Gender Equality Index, we've seriously gone backwards as a country over the last decade. We were at in position 12 and 15, and I think currently we're sitting at 50 globally.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah, and it's largely as a result of our political representation and the number of women that we have elected.
Interestingly, on that data too, the World Gender Gap Index, Australia is number 1 in the whole world for women's educational attainment. So we are the best at that in the world.
Well, so what does that mean, women's educational attainment? What does that mean?
How educated women are in terms of, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're number 1 there.
We're number 1. We educate women the best in the world. We have the best outcomes for that. However, then having those very well-educated, knowledgeable, experienced women represented in our senior leadership ranks, we perform very poorly.
So let's just pause there a moment and just take stock of some of this information you've provided, right? 85% of purchasing decisions are made by females.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there are less than 5% female CEOs in ASX companies. And there's still a 14% pay gap.
Mm-hmm.
But those first two, you know, that whole idea of lived experience that you talked about before, I mean, that's a massive gap, isn't it? It feels like, I can't believe we're here in 2021, and this feels like a last century statistic.
Yeah. Oh, last century was pretty bad though.
Okay,
we do have to recognize we have come a long way, but
Mm.
absolutely stare in the face the brutal facts around how far we still have to go and how important it is to maintain the momentum and to not backslide.
Yeah, okay. So that, and I can see how that would have powered you and inspired you to start Femeconomy. So you started a business because you wanted to help to accelerate the change that needed to occur.
Yeah, absolutely. And to complement the top-down initiatives that were already in place, you know, around women on boards and all of the inclusion, diversity programs that organisations are already running, and, you know, targets that they are setting to get more women into leadership. This really is a bottom-up strategy that every single person, every single woman, every single budget owner, business owner can activate to get more women into leadership and to support women-owned and led businesses and to increase women's ability to participate in the workforce and to create economic security for women, because that pathway to business ownership is a way for women to have economic security and to create financial security for themselves and their families.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one
fantastic.
of the reasons, you know, we talk about the importance of women-owned businesses trading with each other and with companies having gender equality procurement principles is because women-owned a business with a female founder and a female executive will actually employ, you know, 6 times more women. So yeah, again, it's fixing that gap. It's giving women that economic freedom. You know, we've got lots of stories of how, you know, women have brought women under their wing that have, you know, been experiencing domestic and family violence and all those, and given them a way out. So I guess, you know, part of that gender equality conversation is around that, and women's safety and economic security actually go hand in hand.
Enjoying the podcast? If you're looking for more inspiration, head to our website, thecauseeffect.com.au, for more resources on how you can start using your business as a force for good. Or buy the For Love and Money book. Every copy sold allows us to protect 1 square metre of rainforest. Help us save 10,000 square metres by 2025.
Okay, so you're really clear on why you're in business. Can you share with our listeners how? Like, so what's the how of Femeconomy? What is it that you do?
So we accredit companies that have at least 30% women on their board of directors or are 50% female owned, and we publish that data. So we make that publicly available to anyone. We want it to be as frictionless as possible for them to find a women-owned or women-led business. But I think for us, you know, the Femeconomy effect is about, yes, you can use our website and research businesses, and yes, that is a tool. But in your own homes and in your own communities, you will know other women who have their own businesses, or, you know, so support them. Just think about that as an idea to support the people in your network who are women owned. So, but yes, we are absolutely a tool and a way to have a conversation around that, and also a way to keep companies accountable. You know, what Jade was saying before around continuing the conversation and continuing to educate. You know, every year Jade reviews the leadership composition of around 1,500 brands on our site. And what we see is that, or what she's picked up is that, you know, companies will get to that 30% women on the board of directors and go, great job done. And then someone resigns, or there's a merger, and then all of a sudden they drop below that again. And the reason that 30% is really important is because women are not just heard, women are heard in their own right rather than being represented as part of a minority, and research backs that up. So we need to make sure that it's not just that 30% that they hit and forget about it. They need to keep going. So, you know, our data is a way to continue to have that conversation and to continue to educate the female economy about who's in, who's out, what's happening.
So it's an ongoing thing. You can certify, you can get accreditation, but they have to recertify, or you look for evidence that it's continuing.
Absolutely, yeah. And we do have companies that are on that precipice of the particularly 30%, who over the last 5 years since we've been publishing the data set, they have come in and they've come out, and they've come in and they've come out, because they've kind of get to 30% and go, yep, hit the target, done, moving on to something else now. So and that's why I keep saying we just can't afford to take our eye off that ball. It's a live conversation. It will always have to be a live conversation.
And it's all types and all inclusive, isn't it? So you would get businesses coming in who are keen to tick a box because they know about, they recognise the value to their business. They're thinking about it through the commercial lens. And then there are those who go, no, we want to be part of a movement for change. We see the benefits, but that all-inclusive approach, I look at your business and I look at Femeconomy, and I don't see a business. I see it is a business, of course, but it's a movement. It's a movement for change is what I see is powering it.
And to be really frank, we wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't a movement. We had discussions around the business model when we first set up, should we be a not-for-profit? Should we be a company? And in the end, we decided to go with a for-profit social enterprise because we've both come from business backgrounds, and to us, that was our experience base, and it just made more sense to us from a sustainability point of view and our ability to achieve longevity so that we can persevere towards this social change.
Yeah, and to be able to scale the impact that you want to achieve.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. And so what other, you've got the directory, so the tool that people can come and search. You do a lot more than that from my experience with you. You're constantly looking at how you can further the agenda. Can you share some of those initiatives that you've been part of?
Yeah, I guess there's two different examples that I can think of, one around our advocacy work that we do, and then another about our outreach work. So an example of an advocacy piece is that we developed a discussion paper on how women-owned businesses impact women's economic security, because when we were talking to corporates, governments, not-for-profits about including women-owned businesses in their supply chains, they were like, well, why are they important? What impact do they have? So we started educating them around that. And we were invited to Canberra to present that at a parliamentary breakfast, and there were some really good outcomes, and that's actually led to conversations with all state governments, which has been wonderful. Recently, if we talk about our community and the movement, the Queensland government released a consultation for their next Queensland Women's Strategy. And so we got our community behind it and said, request for at least 5% procurement target for women-owned businesses in Queensland. This was introduced in the US in 1994.
Whoa.
So it's not something new. It's got a really good research base of the social and economic impact. We've seen the difference Indigenous procurement has made to, Australia's economy and the social impact of that. 5% isn't actually a lot considering how much we are of the population. But that's what I mean. It's more than just us. It is a movement. It is trying to create that legacy. Same with the work Jade did around the Women on Board strategy for Queensland Government. So that's, advocacy is a really important part of what we do, and we actually love doing it. The other piece, if I think about some of our, I guess, more outreach programs is, I want people to feel like Femeconomy is for them, no matter where they come from in Australia, no matter what their cultural background. So one of the programs we did was for women-owned businesses in very remote and drought-affected Queensland. And we can do all this because we're online, we can give them support, we can bring them into a national network. So that's been a great program that we did over the last year. And I guess one of our highlights for this year was actually going out to Charleville and meeting some of the women-owned businesses and getting them to speak at their events. And then they've gone on to apply for national awards, they're speaking at other events. And these are people that have to travel hundreds of kilometres, that have got multi-businesses on the go because they come from regional communities, but they're the ones actually changing these regional communities, and we can learn so much from them, our, community in other parts of Australia. So we love doing those types of programs as well. So there's some of the different things that we do as part of our work.
Yeah, fantastic. And what I love about, one of the things I love about what you guys do is you raise the profile of your members of women-owned businesses, and you hero your members. So and you make it really accessible. Your levels of membership are very, very accessible at no matter what stage of business you are. So if you are a female-owned business, where are you if you're not with Femeconomy?
Just on the reason we started interviewing our members is because women are only 18% of quoted media sources when it comes to business in Australia.
Yep.
So we're not hearing them as leaders of industry. We hear about them as mums or grandmothers or the neighbour down the street, but not as leaders of industry. So that's why we started doing that. And actually that piece of work meant that we've been recognised by the National Library of Australia. And so every interview we've ever done will be part of the Australian archives and will be able to be accessed globally in perpetuity. So that is capturing women's stories and having that historical record. Again, it's, how do you create that legacy? How is it beyond whatever, Jade and I do day to day?
That's so powerful. That's brilliant. Why is it taking so long?
Oh, I think two things: unconscious bias and the breadwinner model. We all are raised, I suppose, in this cultural paradigm where we have traditionally, we've got all of these legacy structures around men as leaders and men as breadwinners, and culturally and socially and at a community level and also at an organizational level, it really does take time to change those systems, structures, mindsets, legislation. It takes time. Yeah.
And I think culture is huge, isn't it? And I think we underestimate what a strong role it plays. I mean, even my situation, because my husband is from Montenegro, the former Yugoslavia, and he came back to Australia to be with me, and because English isn't his first language, I was the obvious breadwinner. It made sense for us. So when we had our child, he was a stay-at-home parent and I went back to work. And I was shocked at even culturally how some people were very judgmental about him.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, right? It's crazy. We're so wed to our rules, our cultural rules, and they are the very things that shackle us. And when I say I was surprised at how people viewed that and the cultural beliefs around that wasn't just men, that was women as well. There were many that celebrated it, but there were some that also kind of had a little bit of judgment on the side, which is really interesting. But
yeah, I had the same experience. Carol and my husband stayed home with our daughter for 6 years. Yeah. And I was the breadwinner. So it becomes very, again, it's lived experience. It becomes very visible to you, what those social constructs are when you're receiving feedback around stepping outside of the accepted or the norm.
Mm.
So the work. I'm hopeful for the next generation coming through. I think, the glass staircase that we put men on in this country, when I read an article yesterday about an organisation making sure all of their leave's not maternity leave, it's parental leave. That change in dialogue and making it opening it up to everyone in their organisation, and then having men that actually take it and show that it can be done differently. That changing that system and structure and just that legacy, item will start to change those things as well.
Yeah, it has to. And the work you are doing, which is telling these stories of the business, these women-owned businesses, or women in leadership positions in these businesses, so crucial that people see that and they can see themselves in a similar story. So yeah. So tell me, the path you're on, I'm sure, has had many, many challenges. How has your purpose, what you're here to try and achieve, how has that led you through difficult times?
I think we always use our purpose, and we talk a lot about legacy as our compass, and it's the first thing that we talk about in every 6-monthly planning session that we have, why we exist and our progress against that legacy and our fundamental purpose for being. I think how it has really helped to drive our business and to help us through challenges is it's a really good yardstick for measuring what we say yes to and what we say no to. I think in business it can become really easy to become overwhelmed by the level of requests and invitations and things that are coming at you, and sometimes not know how to necessarily filter those. And that for us has helped us to stay on the path and on the track and really be focused, laser focused on achieving that purpose. What would you say, Alanna?
Oh, I'd agree with you, Jade. And I think it sort of makes it easier to say, to decide, but also it's made us more successful because, people want to be part of that purpose. They want to be part of creating change. Sometimes people don't know where to go. So it's been, the more that we've, been laser focused in on that purpose, the better outcomes we've had for the business.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, because I imagine an organisation like yours, that compass is vital, because I'm sure you would attract numerous opportunities, people who, want something from you or want to give you something. So having that clarity and being able to figure out what to say yes to and what to say no to, and I'm delighted you said yes to this podcast. But how do you actually work through it? Because I think there are a lot of businesses who get overwhelmed with that, particularly businesses who are really driven by their purpose. How do you have a criteria? Is it values led? Like, how do you work through that?
It becomes easier over time, and I think when you start off, you try a lot of different things as well, and you quickly figure out what works and what doesn't work. We talk all the time, as things come through. If it's something that we've decided on as a standing no, then doesn't need a discussion. But as opportunities arise, we absolutely have that discussion between us in terms of how it does fit with our purpose, how it does fit with our current priorities, and we're just becoming better at saying yes to the right opportunities and no to ones that actually might be better suited to one of our members. We do a lot of that as well, because we do receive so many requests and opportunities. we think about consciously, is there a member who we can refer into that opportunity when it's not right for us?
And I think people just appreciate when you get back to them. So many people like send out requests and just by saying, no, it's not right for us because of A, B, and C, they're like, oh, thank you for responding. Just that basic etiquette and giving them the why, and that we actually have considered it. I think people actually really appreciate that. It's okay to say no. It really is. But people would prefer that than not hear anything.
Oh yes, you've touched on one of my pet hates. It's just that lack of acknowledgement on things. It's basic respect, isn't it? But so you talked about Alanna. You talked about your hope for the next generation coming through, and I share that as well. I see that they really do think differently, but I also see, and I know this from talking to my daughter, who also works with me. She's almost 23, and she actually just spoke at an event I did, and she talked about how all of her uni friends were coming out with all these aspirations and excitement, and then suddenly finding themselves in a position where they're accepting jobs from the very organisations that they cancelled before, right? Because they feel that they can't say no. They're told you take any opportunity you're given because you don't know what else you're going to get. And suddenly they're getting sucked into this machine of business that is, business as usual, what it always has been. And they feel powerless to do anything.
I would say learn what you can from those organisations, get as much professional development as you absolutely can, get a few runs on the board and then go. But just if it's that first stepping stone for you, then, realise it for what it is and go, okay, what can I learn from this? I don't know what you would say, Jade.
I think yeah, absolutely. And I always say to people, because I obviously in working in HR have come had a lot of career discussions with people. You always need to feel like you're in charge of yourself and that you have control and decision making over your own destiny, I think. It's just such a fundamental part of well-being and mental health. If you don't like where you are right now, put a time frame on it and have a plan where you're working consciously towards a different alternative, because that then puts you in control of your situation and you feel, a sense of autonomy around it rather than being a victim to your circumstance and feeling powerless.
Yeah. And for the young women who are coming into businesses and who might hear about this message, that of female purse power, procurement power, and yet see the huge gap between representation at a leadership level. What can they do? And part of that question is corporate versus small to medium businesses versus starting your own business. They're looking at that whole array of opportunities and where they can best travel and create a mark and have some meaning. What is your advice to them?
I would say to anyone, don't stay too long in a place where you're not valued, because it's really bad for your self-confidence and your self-esteem. You shouldn't, once you have decided this is not the place, move.
That's such good advice. That's brilliant. Thank you.
And look
Alanna?
at the workplace gender equality agency, employer of choice, the people doing well. They're the ones that have changed the systems and structures to enable those young women to succeed. It shouldn't be up to the young women to change the organisation. We are the ones, our generation, the generations before us, that should be changing it for them. So use the data that's out there and set up a seek search for those companies, because they're the ones that are, making it better for them.
Fantastic. And so what were the sources that you just mentioned?
the Workplace Gender Equality Agency.
Yeah.
And they have an employer of choice list. So these are like the creme de la creme in Australia. So they are companies that have over 100 employees. I think if you're looking for smaller companies, then, there's definitely other places you can go, Femeconomy or B Corp, or, speaking to people in your network. Yeah.
And that's brilliant. And that, again, furthers the movement, because the more young women, start looking for those organisations and prioritising those organisations, the more we see that migration of quality candidates to those organisations, and the more we further this movement.
Well, we do have the most highly educated women in the world.
So there you go.
Big companies that have them, they're going
there
to
you go. That's mind-blowing. That's just crazy, right? So in closing, I have this belief that leaders of purposeful businesses are essentially optimists, because they believe, or we believe, we can create change. That's why you're showing up. So channeling that optimism, can you share, each of you, what you think the world will look like in 2030?
For me, I would love to see legislation actually catch up to the social progress that is happening, and around community expectations, around gender equality, around inclusion and diversity. I think there's always a lag between the legislation that really puts a stake in the ground for current and future generations in terms of what's acceptable and what's not. And that's what I'd like to see, legislation catch up to, what overwhelmingly we think workplaces should look like.
Yeah, brilliant, because that will accelerate things a lot quicker, won't it, when that happens? Thank you. Alanna?
I'd like to turn on the television and see our gender balanced and culturally diverse parliaments speaking respectfully to each other, listening to each other's ideas, and working out the best way forward for the country on behalf of everyone that lives here. I'd love to see that. But, for me, if I think about my two children, I've got a boy and a girl, I don't want any doors closed to them because of their gender. I don't want my son to feel like he has to be a certain Australian male stereotype. I want it to be a country and society where everyone thrives, where we respect each other, listen to each other. So yeah, I'm very optimistic about the future.
Brilliant.
Particularly to turn on the telly and see,
Yes. I'm cheering in the background. And I just want to pull out, we only touched on it briefly, but I think it was you, Jade, who said, female owned businesses, or females with businesses with good female representation are more profitable than other businesses. And can you just pull out, where does that stat come from? Because I think that's a really important takeaway I would love to leave listeners with.
That's a stat from the study the Peterson Institute of Economics did. And I think it's something like 15% more profitable, but there have been subsequent studies done on a global basis. There's so much research around this. There is so much research that proves it and proves it again and proves it and keeps proving it, that it's actually really good for business. It's good for people, and it's good for business to have women in leadership.
Brilliant. Is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners?
Use your purse power and procurement power to support women-owned businesses. No. Just thank you for having this great conversation around purpose today, Carolyn. It's been wonderful.
Thank you for joining us. And for anyone who wants to learn more about Femeconomy and, potentially look at becoming a member of the community, where should they go? What should they do?
Just visit us at femeconomy.com or find Jade or I on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Thank you. Jade, did you want to have any last words?
I think Alanna has said it all.
Fantastic.
Thanks for the opportunity, Carolyn. It's been a great discussion.
Thank you so much for coming on and having a chat and sharing. You've blown my mind with some of the statistics you have shared, and I can see there is so much work to do, but with you two powerhouses doing what you're doing, it feels like we are moving in the right direction. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the For Love and Money podcast. If you'd like to take a deeper dive into the purpose movement, visit us at thecauseeffect.com.au. And remember, doing good is good for business. So if you're not doing good, then what are you doing?